The plane was full. Every seat taken, every overhead bin closed. 30 people settled in, ready to go somewhere. And then 2 men in dark blazers walked down the aisle. They weren't looking at seat numbers. They already knew which one they wanted. The cabin went quiet the way cabins go quiet when something is happening that nobody wants to name out loud. A man in a navy suit closed his tablet, slowly, no rush, like he had done this before. Like some part of him had always known this moment was coming. In one form or another. On one plane or another. In one version of this country or another. He straightened his jacket. He picked up his bag, and not one person said a word. What happened next would cost one airline $4.8 billion. But that was later. Right now there was just a man walking up an aisle, and a silence that said everything. He was already standing on the jet bridge when he realized nobody had said a word. Not one word. 30 people. 30 seats. 30 pairs of eyes that had watched the whole thing happen and decided, collectively, silently, that it was not their problem. Marcus Webb stood there with his carry-on in his hand and his navy suit without a single wrinkle, and his boarding pass still pulled up on his phone. And he thought about something his mother said to him once in a hallway that smelled like chalk dust and cafeteria grease. He thought about her voice. The way it never shook, even when it should have. Fresno, California, 1992. Marcus was 13 years old, and his shoes were starting to separate at the sole, and he knew better than to mention it, because his mother was already working 2 grading periods behind, and his father Raymond had just picked up a 3rd shift at the auto body shop on Blackstone Avenue. The hallway outside Principal Norwood's office had a water stain on the ceiling shaped like a boot. Marcus had counted the ceiling tiles 14 times by the time the door finally opened. His mother walked out. Claudette Webb, 51 years old now, 45 back then. A woman who had spent 20 years teaching 3rd grade to children who sometimes came to school without breakfast, and she never once mentioned it in the faculty lounge because she was too busy making sure they had something to eat by 10 o'clock. She walked out of that office and her face was the same face she always wore. Calm, arranged, like she had decided a long time ago that the world did not get to see her rattle. Mark stood up fast. What did he say? Claudette looked at her son for a long moment. Then she reached out and straightened the collar of his jacket. Just that. Just the collar. A parent complained, she said. Said I didn't look like a teacher. Marcus felt something hot move up through his chest. What does that even mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. So what did Norwood say? He said he'd look into it, which meant nothing. And she knew it, and Marcus knew she knew it. And neither of them said that part out loud because some things you learn early. You learn to carry the weight of what's left unsaid. You learn to fold it up small and put it somewhere it won't slow you down. Claudette Webb took her son's hand. They walked out of that building and into the flat, bright Fresno afternoon, and she said the thing she said. The thing Marcus would carry for 34 years without realizing how heavy it was. Marcus, people can question where you stand, but nobody takes that ground away from you. Not unless you hand it to them yourself. He didn't fully understand it then. He was beginning to understand it now. The morning before the flight, Marcus was in his office on the 14th floor of the Apex Logic AI building in San Francisco, and the city was doing what it always does in October. Fog in the morning, sharp light by noon, the bay sitting out there like it had nothing to prove. His desk had 3 things on it: a cold cup of coffee, a framed photograph of Diana and Maya from a camping trip 2 summers ago, and a laptop with a slide deck open to the final page. The final page said Partnership Summary, Apex Logic AI and Vertex Airlines, projected value, $48 billion over 7 years. David Ossie knocked twice and walked in without waiting. He always did that, 20 years of friendship, and not once had he waited for a come in. You sleep? David asked. Some. How much is some? Enough. David sat down across from him and looked at the laptop screen and said nothing for a moment. David was 44 years old and had the kind of face that told you exactly what he was thinking before he opened his mouth. Right now his face said he had something to say and wasn't sure if now was the time. Marcus looked up. Just say it. I'm saying it. David leaned forward. Once you walk into that room tomorrow, once you shake those hands, the expectations go through the roof. You understand that, right? This isn't a pilot program. This isn't a trial period. This is 7 years. This is their entire cargo routing infrastructure. I know what it is. I know you know. I'm just saying. You sure? Marcus looked at the photograph on his desk. Diana laughing at something off camera. Maya with a marshmallow on a stick, completely serious, treating it like surgery. I've been sure since I was 13 years old, he said. This is just the part where it finally shows up. David looked at him for a second. Then he nodded once, walked to the door. Flight's at 2:15, he said. Don't be late. When have I ever been late? David opened the door, literally never. That's what worries me. Nobody's that consistent, and then he was gone. Marcus called home from the car on the way to the airport. Diana picked up on the second ring. He could hear the TV in the background. Something about weather patterns, them. Maya's voice somewhere further back in the house, talking to herself the way she always did when she was working through a problem. You packed? Diana asked. I packed yesterday, of course you did. He could hear her smiling. Nervous? No, liar. A little, he said, but the good kind. The good kind is still nervous, Marcus. Good kind means was quiet for a second, then, come home Friday. I'll make the thing you like. You're going to have to be more specific. No, I don't. Them. You know what I mean. He did know. He smiled at the window. The city moved past, gray and gold. Then Maya's voice appeared suddenly close, like she'd grabbed the phone without warning. Because she had. Bah, I need to tell you something about my project. Hi, Maya. The grid system I'm modeling. I figured out why it keeps losing efficiency. Okay, them. It's because the energy is going into the wrong part of the system. But here's the thing. She paused. The pause of someone who had just understood something and couldn't believe it took this long. The energy doesn't disappear. It never disappears. It just goes somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. So if you redirect it, if you just point it right, you don't lose anything. You actually end up with more than you started with. Marcus stopped looking at the city, them. He looked at nothing for a moment, just sat with that. That's a good thing to know, he said quietly. I know, right? Okay, bye, love you, and she was gone. Back to her grid and her diagrams and her complete certainty that the world could be understood if you just looked at it carefully enough. Marcus stared out the window the rest of the way to the airport. San Francisco International was doing what airports do on a Wednesday afternoon. Moving, everyone moving. All of them going somewhere, carrying something, trailing wheels and worry behind them. Marcus moved through it the way he always did, efficiently, without friction. Years of travel had taught him to become almost invisible in airports. Head down just enough. Bag just small enough to fit under the seat. Dressed well enough to belong anywhere without drawing attention. Except it didn't always work that way. The gate agent at B14 was a woman in her early 30s with a headset around her neck and the particular expression of someone who had been doing this job long enough that each passenger had become functionally a barcode. Marcus stepped up, handed over his boarding pass. She scanned the pass, glanced at the ID, looked at her screen. No good morning, no have a good flight. Not even a mechanical thank you, just the scan and the flat nod, and the next person already being waved forward before Marcus had fully stepped away. He noticed, he filed it, he moved on. Because that was the thing nobody told you about living in a body that made certain people uncomfortable. You developed a filing system. A very efficient, very organized, very exhausting filing system for all the small moments that didn't quite rise to the level of incident but never quite let you forget where you stood. He turned left into first class. Seat 2A, window. He had chosen it specifically. He liked to watch the ground fall away during takeoff. There was something about that moment, the exact second when the earth releases you, that never got old. He settled in, slid his bag under the seat in front, pulled out his tablet. Opened the slide to the executive summary one more time, not because he needed to review it. He knew every number, every projection, every risk model. He could recite the whole thing backward in his sleep. He opened it because it grounded him. Because seeing the work laid out like that, clean and precise and built from nothing over the past 3 years, reminded him of something important. He had earned this seat, not this seat specifically. Not 2A on flight 2280. This, all of this, the suit, the deal. The view from 14 floors up, every single square foot of where he had arrived. He had earned it the long way, the only way he knew. She came down the aisle about 7 minutes after he sat down. White sweater, good leather bag. The kind of careful put together that takes effort to look effortless. Mid-40s, maybe close to 50, Moving through first class with the particular confidence of someone who flew this way often enough that it felt like home. And then she stopped, right at row 2. She looked at Marcus, then at the seat number above his head, then back at Marcus. Something shifted in her face. Not anger, not exactly. Something more like confusion. The specific confusion of someone whose mental picture of the world had just developed a small, inconvenient crack. I think this might be my seat, she said. Her name was Renata Hollis. Marcus would learn that later. In that moment, she was just a woman in a white sweater standing in the aisle with her hand on the overhead bin, and her eyes doing a very particular kind of not quite meeting his. Marcus looked down at his boarding pass. Still on his screen, placard. 2A. This is me, he said, calm, factual. The voice he used in meetings when someone challenged a number they hadn't bothered to verify. She hesitated. Are you sure? And there it was, are you sure? Not I must have misread mine, not let me check my boarding pass, not sorry, my mistake, are you sure? As if the more reasonable explanation was that he was wrong. As if the seat itself might have a different opinion about who belonged in it. I'm sure, he said. She stood there for one more beat. Then she pulled out her phone, made a show of checking something, nodded slowly like she was processing new information and finding it mildly surprising, and moved back to 3D. Marcus returned to his tablet. The flight attendant appeared with water. Young woman, genuinely warm, none of the performance about it. Marcus thanked her. She smiled. Small moment, clean moment. He went back to the executive summary. The boarding process finished, the overhead bins closed, the engines began their low negotiation with the air. Marcus allowed himself one moment, eyes closed. The weight of 3 years sitting in his chest like something almost ready to release. Friday. He'd be home Friday. Then he heard it, not loud, designed not to be loud. The particular register of a voice that wants to be overheard by the right person and not the wrong one. It came from behind him and to the left, near the galley. He just seemed off, Renata was saying. Low. Careful, but not careful enough. I tried to talk to him and he completely ignored me. Marcus did not move. I don't know. It's probably nothing. But I just thought someone should know. The flight attendant's voice, murmured, neutral. The professional warmth of someone trained to take every concern seriously. I appreciate you letting us know. Then footsteps, moving toward the front of the plane. Then the sound of the cockpit door. Marcus sat completely, his tablet was still open. The executive summary was still on the screen. The numbers were still right. The projections were still sound. The deal was still the deal. None of that had changed. And yet something in the air had changed. Something had shifted in the temperature of the cabin in the 3 feet around his seat, and he felt it the way you feel a storm before you see it. In the body, in the back of the neck. He sat still, he waited. They came from the front of the plane, 2 of them, dark blazers, lanyards. The specific walk of authority being performed rather than exercised. They came down the aisle and they stopped at row 2. And the taller one looked at Marcus with an expression that was professionally neutral and personally unconvincing. Sir, we need to ask you to step off the plane for a few minutes. Marcus looked at him, then at the other one. Then slowly, deliberately, he looked around the cabin. 30 people. Some looking at their phones, some looking at the window. Some doing the thing where you look just past someone so you can tell yourself later you weren't really watching. Not one person said anything. Not a single voice. Not what's the problem here. Not is there something wrong with his ticket. Not this man hasn't done anything. 30 people in a pressurized metal tube at 30,000 feet worth of potential altitude. 30 people who had seen him board. 30 people who had watched him sit down and open his work and ask for water with no ice. 30 people, 0 words. Marcus felt something move through him, not rage. He knew rage was loud and fast and it burned itself up quickly. This was something slower, quieter, heavier. The specific weight of a disappointment you had been carrying so long you'd stopped noticing it. Until a moment like this one made you notice it all at once. He turned back to the man in front of him. Is there a problem with my ticket? We'd just like to verify a few things outside the aircraft. My ticket was scanned, my ID was checked at the gate. This will only take a few minutes, sir. The word doing a lot of work. The word trying to perform respect while communicating something else entirely. Marcus looked at his tablet, at the executive summary. Had 3 years of work and 200 employees and one partnership that was supposed to change how a major American airline moved freight across the continent. He closed the tablet. He took a breath that nobody would have called deep. Just a breath. Just air moving in and out of a person who had decided a long time ago that the world did not get to see him rattle. He stood. He took his bag from under the seat. He straightened his jacket. He was not rushed. He was not stooped. He moved the way Claudette Webb had moved out of Principal Norwood's office in 1992. Like the ground was still his. Like it would still be his on the other side of whatever this was. He walked up the aisle, and when he passed row 3, he stopped. Just for a second. He looked at Renata Hollis. She did not look back. Her eyes were on her coffee cup. Both hands wrapped around it like it was the only solid thing in the world. Marcus looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then he walked on. The jet bridge was empty. They took him to a side corridor near the gate. White walls, fluorescent light. The hum of climate control that never quite gets the temperature right. The questions were what the questions always were. Name, destination, purpose of travel, employer. Marcus answered each one. Steady, precise. The voice he used when someone in a meeting was wrong and didn't know it yet. Employer, the taller man said, pen on notepad. I'm the CEO, Marcus said. Apex Logic AI. The pen stopped. We're the company finalizing a $48 billion in integration contract with Vertex Airlines. Marcus looked the man directly in the eye. The airline that owns this plane. The airline whose logo is on your lanyard. A pause. The two men exchanged a look. The kind that contains an entire conversation in less than a second. The supervisor appeared then. Clipboard, lanyard. The particular energy of someone who has just been handed a situation she did not create and does not know how to exit gracefully. Mr. Webb, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. It appears there was a miscommunication from the cabin. We've arranged for you to board our next flight to Newark departing in 3 hours. We've arranged a seat upgrade and a meal credit as well. She held out a printed voucher. Marcus looked at it. He did not take it. I don't want a meal credit, he said, quite almost gently, the way you say something when you want to make sure it lands. Mr. Webb, we understand your frustration. Our crew was following established protocol. What protocol removes someone from a plane because a passenger said he seemed off? She didn't answer that. I wasn't making noise. I wasn't causing a scene. I was sitting in a seat I paid for, doing work, waiting for a flight that I had a right to be on. He paused, and 30 people watched me get walked off that plane and not one of them said a single word. The corridor was very quiet. Tell your legal team to expect a call, Marcus said, and he walked away. Not fast, not slow, just walked. The way you walk when you've been doing this your whole life and you're tired but you're not done. When you're carrying something that shouldn't be yours to carry but you pick it up anyway because putting it down has never once been an option. He found a bench outside the gate. He sat down. He put his bag on the floor. He put his tablet on the bag. He put his hands on his knees and he sat there for a moment in the middle of a busy terminal with people moving past him in every direction. Wheeled bags rattling. Announcements overhead. The smell of chain restaurant coffee floating from somewhere to his left. He thought about Diana. About Maya and her energy grid and the way she said it doesn't disappear, it just goes somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. He thought about Claudette. About the hallway outside Principal Norwood's office. About the ceiling tile water stain shaped like a boot. He did not call Elaine first. He did not call David first. He called his mother. She picked up on the second ring. Marcus. And something about the way she said his name. Just his name. Just that one word in that one voice. Something about it made the whole thing heavier for exactly 1 second before it made it lighter. Hey mama, he said. What happened, he told her, short, clean. The way you tell someone who doesn't need it dressed up or softened. Who needs the shape of it, not the decoration. When he finished there was a long pause on her end. Not empty, never empty with Claudette. Just the silence of someone thinking carefully before they speak. A habit she had carried from 30 years in a classroom where what you said next mattered. Marcus, she said finally. You remember what I told you in that hallway? He closed his eyes. Yeah, he said. I remember. Say it back to me. He almost smiled. Almost. People can question where you stand, but nobody takes that ground away from you. Not unless you hand it to them yourself. That's right. A gate announcement crackled overhead. Final boarding for a flight to Denver. You're not going to hand it to them, Claudette said. It was not a question. No, ma'am. Good. A pause. The sound of her kettle somewhere in that Fresno kitchen. The same kitchen he'd grown up in. The same counter where he used to sit and take apart whatever broken thing he'd found that week and try to figure out how to put it back together right. Come see me when you get back, she said. I will. Bring Maya. She hasn't been out since August. I'll bring Maya. Good. Another pause. Then softer. I'm proud of you. You know that. Marcus looked up at the terminal ceiling, at the lights and the signs and the constant motion of a world that didn't stop for this kind of moment. I know, he said. He sat on that bench for 6 more minutes. Then he opened his laptop. He pulled up Elaine Park's number. He started with, I need you to document everything. Timestamps, names, the exact language used. All of it. And then he called David. And then he boarded a different plane 3 hours later and flew to Newark. And the whole time, at cruising altitude, with the clouds below him and the country spread out invisible underneath that, he thought about energy, about how it doesn't disappear, about how it just goes somewhere it wasn't supposed to go, and about what happens when you finally figure out how to point it right. Newark at midnight looks like a city that made a decision a long time ago and stuck with it. Not a beautiful city, not trying to be, just lit up and moving and indifferent to whether you noticed or not. The highway overpass with its red taillights crawling slow in both directions. The diner on Route 1 still open, still serving, still doing its job at an hour when most things had given up. A woman walking a dog on the sidewalk below, both of them unhurried, both of them belonging exactly where they were. Marcus watched it from the cab window. His phone had been off since somewhere over Ohio. Not because the calls stopped. They hadn't. Elaine had called twice, David 4 times. A number he didn't recognize that turned out to be a journalist from a San Francisco tech publication who had somehow already connected the dots before Marcus had eaten dinner. He turned it off because he needed 1 hour that belonged to him. Just one. The cab driver said nothing the whole way to the hotel. Marcus appreciated that more than he could have explained to anyone who hadn't just spent 4 hours on a plane replaying a 30-second moment on a loop. The hotel room was what hotel rooms are. Clean, beige, designed to offend nobody and comfort nobody. The carpet the color of a decision nobody made. The artwork above the bed the kind of thing that exists specifically to fill a wall without saying anything. Marcus put his bag on the chair, sat on the edge of the bed, looked at his own reflection in the blank television screen. 47 years old, he took off his jacket, hung it over the back of the chair the way Raymond Webb had taught him, before Raymond Webb's hands got too stiff to do much hanging of anything. You take care of what you have, because you earned it, because you might need it again tomorrow, because the alternative is showing up to the next thing looking like you didn't care about getting there. He turned his phone back on. 12 notifications arrived in the space of 3 seconds. He called Elaine first, because that was the right order. She picked up on the first ring. "I've been waiting," she said. "I know, talk to me." So he did. The whole sequence. The supervisors with the voucher, the corridor, the questions, his response, the look on the supervisor's face when he said the number. Elaine listened without interrupting, which was one of the things he valued most about her. She collected information before she formed opinions. She did not reach for conclusions before she had all the facts. When he finished, she was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. He had worked with her long enough to know this meant she was organizing. "Okay," she said. "Here's where we are. I'm going to need the timestamp of your original boarding pass scan. The gate agent's name if you have it. The names of the 2 security personnel if they gave them. And I want a written account from you before you sleep tonight. Everything you remember. Every word in order. I can do that. I'm also going to reach out to Vertex's legal team in the morning. Not aggressively. Just a letter that lets them know we're aware of what happened and we're documenting it." "Good, Marcus." Her voice shifted, not softer, more precise. "What do you want the outcome to be? I need to know that before I decide how to approach this." He looked at the beige wall. "I don't want a settlement that goes away quietly," he said. "I want something that costs them enough to change something real." A pause. "That's a longer road. I know what road it is." "Okay," another pause. "Get some sleep. Write the account first. Then sleep up." Opened his laptop, wrote everything down, every word he remembered, every name he had. The exact sequence of events from the moment Renata Hollis appeared in the aisle to the moment the supervisor held out the voucher. He wrote it in the same voice he used for technical documentation. Clean, specific, no editorializing. Just the facts in the order they occurred. Then he called Diana. She picked up on the second ring, the television in the background going quiet as she turned the volume down. The small domestic sound of someone who had been awake waiting for a call they weren't sure when to expect. "Hey," she said. "Hey," the pause. The kind they had developed over 20 years. The kind that did not require filling. "How bad?" she asked. "Not bad the way some things are bad, just." He stopped, reorganized. "You know that feeling when something happens and you knew it was possible and you still weren't ready?" "Yeah," Diana said. "I know that one." 30 people, Diana, not one. She said nothing for a moment. Because she knew that sometimes the worst thing you could do was respond too quickly to the thing that mattered most. She had always known that. It was one of the first things he had understood about her. "Do you want me to fly out?" she asked. "No, you sure?" "I'm sure." He lay back on the hotel bed and looked at the ceiling. "I just needed to call you, then I'm here." "How's Maya asleep?" She finished the grid diagram. "She's been working on it since you left." A small pause. "She asked me twice if you were okay." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you were handling something and you'd call when you could." "She accept that?" She said, and I'm quoting here, "that you always say you're handling something and then you come home and it turns out you handled it and everyone was worried for nothing." A beat. "She's not wrong." Marcus stared at the ceiling. "Not yet, she isn't." Diana was quiet for a moment. Then Marcus. "Yeah, you know what tomorrow needs from you. Not a question, not reassurance, just a reminder from someone who had watched him walk into rooms that didn't want him for long enough to know exactly what those rooms required." "I know," he said. "Then go write up whatever Elaine needs and get some sleep." "Already wrote it up, of course you did." He could hear her smiling. "Come home Thursday night." "Thursday night I'll have food, Diana. The lemon chicken, that's all you had to say." They stayed on the line another few minutes, not talking much, just the presence of each other across 2,000 miles of dark country. The sound of her breathing, the sound of the television she turned back on low, the specific quiet of a person who is still there even when there is nothing left to say. When he hung up, he set his alarm for 6:15, and somewhere around 1 in the morning he actually slept. 6:15 came without ceremony. Marcus showered, dressed in the charcoal suit, stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at himself the way a pilot checks instruments before takeoff. Not vanity, verification. Making sure the outside matched what he needed the inside to project. It did. Enough. He went to he got coffee from the cart near the window, found the corner chair that faced the door, sat down. Elaine called at 6:52. I reached out to Vertex Legal this morning, she said. No preamble. Never preamble with Elaine. They responded within the hour. Which tells you something. They're worried. They're very worried. The response was professional and cooperative, and about 3 times longer than it needed to be, which means their team spent last night writing and rewriting it. A pause. I also want you to know something before you walk into that room. I've been watching the story move overnight. It's in 4 national outlets now. Vertex PR has gone completely dark since yesterday afternoon. Dark is worse for them than talking. Much worse. Going dark reads as guilt to anyone watching. Another pause. Are you ready for today? Yes, Marcus. I mean, are you actually ready? Not are you professionally prepared? Are you ready to be in a room with people who owe you an apology and may not know how to give one? He looked out the lobby window. A woman crossing the street outside with a coffee in each hand, managing both with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing this exact walk for years. I've been ready for that room my whole life, he said. Elaine was quiet for a beat. I know you have. Her voice doing the thing it did sometimes when she dropped the attorney register for exactly 1 sentence. Call me the second you're out. He said he would. He finished his coffee. He was the first one in the building. David called at 7:40. Marcus was in the elevator when his phone buzzed. He answered before the doors closed. Tell me, Marcus said. The clip. David's voice had the particular texture of someone who had been up since 4. Someone on the plane recorded it. 30 seconds. You standing up, you straightening your jacket, walking up the aisle. Nobody saying a word. A pause. It's been up since yesterday evening. Anonymous account. Caption says this man was removed from first class on a Vertex Airlines flight. He had done nothing wrong. Watch what nobody does. The elevator opened on the 32nd floor. Marcus stepped out into the corridor. How many views, he said. 2.3 million as of an hour ago. He walked toward the conference room. Glass walls, gray sky outside. The kind of morning that committed to nothing. The tech press is on it, David continued. 2 national papers picked it up overnight. There's a piece running this morning that connects the clip to the partnership announcement timeline. They've done the math, Marcus. They know who you are and they know what contract you were flying for. Marcus stopped outside the conference room door. Could see through the glass. The Vertex team already inside. 6 of them. Sylvia Crane at the head of the table, which told him what he needed to know about today's power structure. The CFO to her right. 2 attorneys with their papers arranged with the precision of people who had arrived early specifically to feel prepared. David, Marcus said. Yeah, I'll call you after. He put his phone in his pocket. He opened the door. They greeted him with the careful warmth of people who understood exactly how much trouble they were in and had decided that warmth was the correct opening position. Handshakes, water. The offer of coffee he didn't take. We're glad you made it, Sylvia said. I came for the meeting, Marcus said. Same as I planned. Something moved in her expression. Not relief. More like the recognition that this was going to require more honesty than they had scripted for. They sat. The CFO opened his folio. The attorneys arranged their papers. The communications director placed her phone face down on the table, with the specific care of someone managing 4 simultaneous fires and not letting any of them show. Marcus opened his laptop. Not the executive summary, not the integration timeline, not the 7 years of cost modeling his team had spent 14 months building. 2 words, partnership integrity review. The room went still. Not quiet. Still. The difference between noise stopping and something more fundamental stopping. Sylvia looked at the screen, then at Marcus. I thought we were finalizing terms today. We are, Marcus said. These are the terms. He let that sit, because it needed to sit. Because some things require a room to adjust to them before they can be properly heard. Before we talk about cargo routing and emissions reduction and the 7-year integration timeline, he said, I want to ask something, and I want you to actually hear it. He looked around the table, one face at a time, taking his time with each one. If I can be walked off one of your aircraft because a passenger decided I seemed off, what happens to my engineers? Nobody spoke. My senior engineer wears his hair in locks down to his shoulders and laughs too loud in meetings and has been stopped at the entrance of a conference he was presenting at 3 times. In one day, Marcus kept his voice even. The same register he used for data, for projections, for things that required precision to be believed. My lead developer is from Lagos. He has an accent that makes certain people lean in the wrong way when he talks. My project manager is 26 years old, and she is the sharpest person in any room she enters, and she is also the person most likely to be asked whether she's in the right room. He paused. These are the people who built what I'm offering you. And I need to know what happens to them when they show up to integrate this system into your infrastructure. When they sit across the table from your teams. When they fly on your planes for this partnership. Another pause. Shorter, because what happened to me on Tuesday was not an isolated incident, it was a data point, and I have spent 47 years collecting data points just like it. Sylvia Crane's face had gone through several things in the past 2 minutes. What settled on it was not the carefully managed expression she had arrived with. It was something more exposed than that. The red that comes not from embarrassment but from genuine shame. The kind you feel when you know you are responsible for something you did not intend and cannot undo. Marcus, she said, and stopped, and started again. I don't have adequate words for what happened on that plane. I appreciate that. We launched an internal review yesterday. We're pulling the full incident report, every crew statement, every step of how this escalated. We are committed to a full account. Marcus nodded. We want to issue a public statement. Acknowledge what happened and acknowledge it was wrong. We have a diversity framework we've been expanding, and we are prepared to significantly increase our commitment. He looked at her steadily. Sylvia. She stopped. I've heard those commitments before, he said. Not unkind, not angry. Clear the way facts are clear, not from you specifically. From rooms very much like this one. From people in chairs very much like those. A public statement goes out. A framework gets announced. A press release with the right language. He put his hands flat on the table, and 6 months later, same culture, same assumptions, same moment waiting to happen to the next person who sits in seat 2A. He paused. Not because the people in those rooms were malicious. Because systems do not change from a statement. They change when the people who benefit from them decide the cost of not changing is higher than the cost of changing. The room absorbed that. The CFO cleared his throat. Mr. Webb, I want to be very clear that Vertex Airlines regards this with the absolute highest level of seriousness. I know you do, Marcus said. Today you do. Because 2 million people watched a 30-second clip and it's still climbing. No one argued with that, because it was true. And everyone in the room knew it was true. And the particular discomfort of being in a room where the true thing has been said plainly is that there is nowhere left to redirect. Sylvia leaned forward. Tell us what it looks like. The specific commitments, the real ones. Name them and we will put them in a contract. Not a press release, a contract. And his phone buzzed. He glanced at it under the table. Elaine, a text, 4 words. They want to talk. He excused himself, stepped into the hallway, closed the glass door behind him. The hallway was long and quiet. Floor-to-ceiling windows on the left side, the gray Hudson visible in the distance, flat and still. A maintenance cart at the far end. The worker moving methodically from one thing to the next. Unhurried. Doing the job. He called Elaine back. Vertex Legal called me 10 minutes ago, she said. They want a conversation, not adversarial. They're using the word collaborative, which in my experience means they've done the math on what litigation costs versus what a serious structural commitment costs, and they've realized the math doesn't favor them. What kind of structural commitment? That's what they want to discuss. A pause. I think you should let me have that conversation today, while you're still in the building, while they're still scared. Do it, Marcus said. I'll call you in an hour. He stood at the glass wall, looked out at the river, at the flat gray November light on the water. At the city across it going about its morning, with complete indifference to what was happening on the 32nd floor of this particular building. He thought about 60 people. He thought about a 26-year-old project manager, who was the sharpest person in any room she entered, and who was also the most likely to be asked whether she was supposed to be there. He thought about what it would mean to walk back into that conference room and finalize the terms and fly home Thursday night and sit on the porch and tell himself he had made the practical choice. The responsible choice. The choice that protected the 60. Except them. He knew what happened to 60 people hired into a system that had not changed. He had watched it happen. watched brilliant people disappear into organizations that celebrated them on the website and sidelined them in the meeting. That put the right faces in the right photos and left the same assumptions in place underneath. He knew the math on that. And the math was not 60 people protected. The math was 60 people delivered into the machine that had just walked him off a plane. He stood at the window for what felt longer than it was. And then something arrived in his mind that was not a calculation. It was a voice. Maya's voice. From the back seat of a memory that was only 3 days old. Clear and certain the way she always was when she had just understood something. The energy doesn't disappear, Ba. It just goes somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. So if you redirect it before the node, if you point it right before it has the chance to go wrong, you don't lose anything. You end up with more than you started with. He opened his eyes, he turned away from the window, and he walked back into the conference room. He sat down, he looked at Sylvia Crane, and he opened a different window on his laptop. He turned the screen slowly so the room could see it. The Horizons Air logo, clean blue. The stylized wing of a competitor that had reached out 6 months ago and been told Marcus was committed elsewhere. Brendan Mercer had called him last night at 9:47. Marcus had seen the voicemail when he turned his phone back on in the cab. He had not called back yet, but he had listened to it twice on the elevator ride up this morning. The room did not know any of that. What the room knew was that the Horizon Air logo was on Marcus Webb's screen. The CFO's pen stopped moving. "Mr. Webb, I spoke with Brendan Mercer," Marcus said. Which was true. The voicemail counted. "They're ready to move quickly." Sylvia's face did something complicated. Several things at once. "Marcus, please. I'm not here to negotiate against myself," he said. "I built something real. Something that will change how this industry moves cargo. Cut delays. Cut emissions. Create efficiencies your actuaries haven't fully modeled because they haven't seen the second-order effects." He leaned forward slightly. "And I am prepared to bring all of that to a partner who can demonstrate that the people who built it will be treated with the same respect as the technology." The room went to a different kind of quiet. The kind that comes after the last move has been played and everyone is looking at the board. "What does that look like in a contract?" Marcus said. "Not a pledge, not a framework. A contract with consequences. Tell me what that looks like and I will stay in this conversation." He looked at Sylvia directly. "Tell me you can't get there and I'll know what I need to know." The attorney to Sylvia's left started to speak. Marcus did not raise his hand. He just looked at the attorney steadily until the attorney understood that this was not his moment. Sylvia held Marcus's gaze. "Marcus considered that. I fly home tomorrow night. You have until Friday morning." She extended her hand across the table. He looked at it. He shook it once. Clean, not a deal. An acknowledgement that they were both still at the table. For now. He left the building at 11:51. He took the stairs, all 32 floors. Because sometimes you need your body doing something deliberate when your mind has been carrying the weight. The stairwell was quiet and cool, and each step down was a choice made with his own legs, and no one could take that from him. He pushed through the lobby door onto the sidewalk. Cold air. November Jersey City cold that comes off the water at an angle. He put his coat on and stood on the sidewalk and watched the street for a moment. A food cart on the corner, steam coming off it. 2 men in construction gear having a conversation that was apparently very funny. A pigeon navigating the curb with a seriousness disproportionate to the stakes. He called Elaine. "Out," he said. "How did it go? 48 hours. I gave them until Friday morning. I'm still on with their legal team. They're serious, Marcus. Whatever they come back with, it will have teeth. Whether the teeth are the right shape is what we'll find out Friday." A pause. "You did the right thing today. I didn't do anything yet. You did more than you think." Her voice shifted back to its working register. "I'll have a preliminary framework for Horizon drafted tonight, just in case. You were already drafting it. I started it yesterday on the plane home from a different meeting. Yes." A pause. "I've been your lawyer 9 years. I know where things are going before you do. That's what you pay me for." He almost said something about the word almost. He didn't. "Call me when you hear from Vertex Legal," he said. "You'll know before you land Thursday." He flagged a cab. The ride back to the hotel took 18 minutes. Marcus did not look at his phone. He looked at the city. At the particular motion of a Wednesday afternoon in a place that doesn't stop for anyone's crisis. Deliveries being made. A school letting out somewhere 2 blocks over. A river of kids in various states of enthusiasm about the afternoon. A man sitting on a folding chair outside a hardware store reading a newspaper with the focused attention of someone who has decided that the news today is worth the effort. He thought about the 60 engineers. He thought about what David had said, 18 months, 60 positions, the people they had told. The families who were counting on those conversations becoming something real. He thought about what it would have meant to sign the papers this morning. And he thought about what it meant that he hadn't. Not because he knew for certain that Vertex would fail to deliver on whatever they came back with Friday. They might not fail. Sylvia Crane's shame had looked real. The attorney's quick adjustment when Marcus held the line had looked like an organization recalibrating in real time. But knowing was not the same as seeing them. And Marcus Webb had spent 47 years learning the difference between what an organization said it was and what it actually was when nobody was drafting a press release. The cab pulled up to the hotel. He got out, paid, stood on the sidewalk for a moment in the cold. Then he went upstairs, ordered room service that arrived lukewarm and ate it anyway, opened his laptop. He was not writing the account. Elaine had that. He was not reviewing the Vertex terms. Those didn't exist yet. He opened a blank document them. And he started writing something else entirely. Not for Elaine, not for David, not for any of the people who needed things from him. He wrote the thing he had been carrying since Tuesday. The thing that didn't fit in a legal document or a term sheet or a press release. The thing that 30 people on a plane had chosen not to say, and whose silence had said everything. He wrote about systems, about how they don't change from one meeting. About how they shift when the people inside them stop finding the cost of silence acceptable. About how the most dangerous force in the world is not malice. It's assumption. It's the thing that happens in the brain before the brain knows it's happening. The split-second judgment that looks like instinct but is actually architecture, built over generations, maintained by the quiet agreement of everyone who benefits from it and says nothing. He wrote for 40 minutes. He did not publish it, not yet. He just needed to write it somewhere that wasn't inside his own chest. Then he closed the laptop. He sat by the window, and he called Maya. She picked up on the third ring, which meant she was in the middle of something, which she always was. Bah! Hey, hold on. The sound of papers, something falling, the retrieval of the thing that fell. Okay. Hi, what are you working on? The grid. I found the problem. It was the transfer node. She said this the way someone says it, when the answer was obvious in retrospect, and the discovering of it was nonetheless satisfying. The energy was going the wrong direction at the node because the node itself was calibrated wrong. So I recalibrated it and now the whole system runs cleaner. More output. Less loss. I fixed the node. He looked out the window at the gray river. Maya, he said. Yeah. That thing you said before I flew out, about the energy not disappearing. Just going somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. Yeah. I've been thinking about that. A pause. He could hear her processing whether this was a conversation or a debrief. Did it help? More than I expected it to. Good. The sound of her pencil. The quiet of a 15-year-old who had just been told that something she said mattered and who was choosing to receive that information without making it into a performance. Bah? Yeah. Are you actually okay? Not I'm okay the way you say it. Actually okay. He sat with that. The honest answer was complicated. The honest answer involved being tired in a way that sleep addressed only partially. It involved carrying something he had been carrying a long time and knowing he would keep carrying it. It involved being in the middle of something that wasn't finished and might not finish the way he wanted it to, and knowing that too. I'm in the middle of something, he said. But I know what I'm doing. That's different from okay. Yeah, but it's enough for tonight. She considered this, okay. Her pencil again. Don't let them make you small. He looked at the window, at the city going dark outside, at his own reflection beginning to appear in the glass as the light changed. I won't, he said. Good, I have to finish this. Love you too. She was gone. He sat in the chair by the window for a while after that, not doing anything. Just sitting with the city going dark, and the day finishing itself, and the particular weight of a Wednesday that had asked more of him than most weeks asked, and that he had met without losing ground. He had not signed anything today. He had not broken anything today. He had held a line that was harder to hold than it looked from the outside, because holding it meant 60 people were still waiting. Because holding it meant the thing he had spent 3 years building was still in the air. Because holding it required him to believe that what he was asking for was real and possible and worth the cost of asking for it. He believed that. He had believed it for a long time. It was just that some days required him to believe it harder than others. Today had been one of those days. He got up, ordered better room service this time, ate it while it was still hot, set his alarm for 6, and before he slept he sent Elaine one message. Whatever they come back with Friday, it has to be in the contract. Not the press release, the contract, with consequences. She responded in under a minute, already in the framework. Sleep. He put his phone face down. He looked at the ceiling. He thought about a node calibrated wrong. About energy going somewhere it was never supposed to go. About what happens when you fix the calibration before the loss happens rather than after. And then he slept, them. This time without the loop. Thursday came in quiet, no alarm this time. Marcus was already awake when the lights started happening outside the hotel window. That particular pre-dawn gray that isn't dark anymore but hasn't committed to being morning yet. The city in between. Holding its breath. He had been awake since 4, not anxious. Not restless in the way that feels like something is wrong. More like the kind of awake that happens when your body knows something your conscious mind is still catching up to. When a decision has already been made somewhere underneath the thinking and it's just waiting for the rest of you to arrive. He made the hotel coffee, which was bad, which he drank anyway, which was fine because the quality of the coffee was not the point. The warmth was the point, the ritual of it. The small ordinary thing to hold while the larger extraordinary thing settled into its final shape. He sat in the chair by the window. He looked at the city. And at 11 minutes past 5 in the morning he picked up his phone and called Brendan Mercer. Mercer picked up on the second ring, which meant he was also already awake, which told Marcus something. Mr. Webb, Mr. Mercer, a pause. I listened to your voicemail, I figured. The voice of a man in his late 50s who had been running a major airline long enough to know that the best conversations happen before the rest of the world shows up. Unhurried, direct, no performance in it. I also watched the clip. Most people have. 7 million now. Marcus said nothing. I want to say something, Mercer said. And I want you to know I'm not saying it because of the clip or the press coverage or because Vertex dropped the ball and I'm trying to capitalize on that. A pause. What happened to you on that plane was wrong. Full stop. No asterisk. No context that changes it. Marcus looked out the window. A delivery truck moving slow on the street below, the driver's arm out the window even in the cold. Just the arm hanging there. Why are you calling me? Marcus asked. Not unkind, just direct. Because you built something real, Mercer said. And because I've been watching Apex Logic for 2 years and I kept waiting for you to be available and you weren't and now you might be. Another pause. And because I think what you said in that conference room at Vertex yesterday needs to be the foundation of a partnership, not the obstacle to one. Marcus turned that over. How do you know what I said in that conference room? Sylvia Crane called me last night, Mercer said. She told me herself, every word. Marcus sat with that for a moment. That surprised him. He did not show that it surprised him, but it did. Sylvia Crane calling a competitor, voluntarily, to tell them exactly what she had failed to say herself. That was a thing, he wasn't sure yet what kind of thing, but it was one. I'm not going to pretend Horizon Air is perfect, Mercer continued. We've got work to do, real work, not press release work, and I'd rather you come into this knowing that than find out 6 months in. Marcus nodded slowly, even though Mercer couldn't see it. What I can tell you, Mercer said, is that I want to build it right, and I want you at the table when we decide what right means. A long pause. The delivery truck had disappeared around the corner. The street was empty again, that particular quiet that belongs only to the hour before a city fully wakes up. I'm flying home tonight, Marcus said. I know. I'll have Elaine reach out tomorrow. I'll have our team ready. Another pause, shorter this time. Mr. Mercer, Marcus said. Brendan. He looked at the window, at his own reflection in the glass, at the city behind it. I'm going to hold you to that. I'd be worried if you didn't, Mercer said. And that was that. He called Elaine at 7. Elaine Park had been his attorney for 9 years, and in that time she had negotiated 4 major contracts. 3 near disasters. 1 situation involving a competitor who had tried to poach his entire engineering team simultaneously. And exactly 1 moment where Marcus had called her at 2 in the morning. And she had answered without question. And helped him think through the thing that needed thinking through. She was the most precise person he knew, which was why he trusted, she said. No preamble. She never did preamble. We're done with Vertex. A pause. 1 beat. Okay. I gave Sylvia until Friday. She's not going to come back with anything real in 48 hours and we both know it. The internal review is going to take months. The press release is going to be careful and managed and ultimately designed to protect the brand more than change the culture. Agreed, Elaine said. So Horizon, Mercer called. I called him back this morning. Have your team reach out today. Already on it. I drafted preliminary framework terms last night. Last night, Marcus. I've been your lawyer for 9 years. I knew where this was going before you did. He almost smiled. Get me terms I can look at before I fly out. You'll have them by 3. Good. One more thing. Her voice shifted, slightly, just enough for him to notice. The incident report from Vertex. I've seen it. They're framing it as a cabin safety protocol response to a passenger concern. I know. Which means if we go legal, we're going legal. then I need you to be prepared for the narrative they'll build. Isolated incident, good faith response. Crew following standard procedure, I know the narrative, and I'm not doing this for a settlement. He said it the way he said things that had already been decided. Clean, final, no room for negotiation on the underlying point. I'm doing this because the next person who sits in that seat shouldn't have to go through what I went through. And the only way that changes is if there's a cost. Silence on Elaine's end. The kind of silence that means she agrees and is also calculating everything that comes with it. Okay, she said. Then we go. He hung up, finished the bad coffee, started packing. The statement from Renata Hollis went up at 10:17 that morning. Marcus saw it because David forwarded it without comment, which was itself a comment. It was 3 paragraphs, carefully worded. The kind of carefully worded that has an attorney's fingerprints all over it without the attorney's name anywhere on it. It said, I want to be clear that I had no intention of causing harm to any individual. I was concerned about what I perceived as unusual behavior, and I reported my concern to the crew in good faith. I deeply regret that my actions contributed to an outcome that hurt someone, and I am sorry for any pain this situation has caused. Any pain this situation has caused them. Not the pain I caused, any pain this situation caused, as if the situation had arrived on its own, as if nobody had made any choices that led to it. Marcus read it once. Then he put his phone face down on the hotel desk and finished packing and did not think about Renata Hollis again. Because she was not the story. She had never been the story. She was just the moment, the visible tip of something that went down a long way. And the depth of it was the thing worth thinking about. The thing Marcus did not expect happened at 11:43. He was in the lobby waiting for his car to the airport when his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Pennsylvania area code. He almost didn't answer, except something made him answer. Mr. Webb. A man's voice, older, careful. Not nervous exactly, but not fully steady either. I don't know if this is the right thing to do, calling like this. I got your number from the public contact on your company website. I almost didn't call. I almost talked myself out of it twice. Marcus stood still in the lobby. People moving past him in every direction. Who is this? My name is Gerald Foss. I was on flight 2280, row 5. The lobby went quiet. Not actually quiet. It was a hotel lobby on a Thursday morning and it was full of sound. But something went quiet in the way Marcus was hearing it. I was there, Gerald Foss said. I saw the whole thing. Marcus waited. I want you to know. I saw it and I didn't say anything and I've been. He stopped. Tried again. I'm 67 years old. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I was 8 years old when they bombed the church in Birmingham. I watched the marches on a 12-inch black and white television in my parents' living room. I have spent 60 years telling myself that I am someone who understands what it means to stand up when it matters. A long pause, and I sat in row 5 and I watched you get walked off that plane and I did not say one word. Gerald Foss stopped speaking. Marcus stood in the lobby of the hotel and said nothing and let the man sit in what he had just said. Because it needed to be sat in. I'm not calling to make myself feel better, Gerald said. I know that's probably what it sounds like, but I'm not. I'm calling because I think you deserve to know that someone saw it, that someone knew exactly what was happening and chose comfort over conscience and has been living with that since Tuesday night. Marcus found a quiet corner near the window, sat down in the chair there. His car could wait. Mr. Foss, he said. Gerald. Gerald, he looked out the window, the street, the ordinary Thursday morning of it. Why are you telling me this? Because I think. Gerald Foss stopped. Started again. I think the silence is the thing that makes it possible. For it to keep happening. Not the person who reports something that isn't wrong. Not the crew following a protocol that shouldn't have been triggered. The silence. The 30 people who decide that speaking up is more uncomfortable than watching something unjust happen. A pause. I've been that person, and I needed you to know I know it. Marcus sat with that for a long time. Long enough that Gerald said, Are you still there? I'm here, Mark said. I'm just. He looked at his hands. Thank you for calling. I mean that. I don't deserve thanks. Maybe not. But I'm giving it anyway. He paused. What you're carrying right now, the fact that you're carrying it, that means something. That means there's something in you that knows the difference. And the question is just what you do with it next. Silence. I don't know what I do with it next, Gerald said. Neither do I, Marcus said. But I think the fact that you called is a start. Another long pause. Different quality this time. Not heavy, something slightly lighter. I'm going to write something, Gerald said. I don't know where, maybe just for myself. But I'm going to write it down. What I saw, what I didn't do, what it cost them. I think you should, Marcus said. They stayed on the phone for another minute without saying much. Two men from entirely different positions on the map of American life finding an unexpected meeting point in the lobby of a Jersey City hotel on a Thursday morning. When Gerald Foss hung up, Marcus sat in that chair for 3 full minutes. Then he picked up his bag and walked out to his car. Gerald Foss did write it. He posted it that evening on a small blog he had maintained irregularly for 11 years. Travel notes mostly. Photos from road trips. The occasional thought about history, because he had been a high school history teacher for 31 years before he retired, and some habits don't stop just because the job does. The post was 4 paragraphs. It said, "I was on the plane, I was in row 5. I watched a man in a Navy suit get walked off a first-class flight for no reason I could see other than the reason that has always existed in this country and that we tell ourselves we have moved past them. I am 67 years old, I have known better my whole life, and I sat there and I said nothing. I don't have a redemption arc to offer. I just have this, I was the silence. And the silence is not neutral. The silence is always a choice, and I chose wrong. I'm writing this because I think that matters more than whether anyone reads it." The post got shared 3,000 times in the first hour. Then 30,000. Then something happened that Gerald Foss had not anticipated it, and Marcus had not expected, and nobody had engineered or planned for or put in a strategy deck. People started writing back. Not comments. Letters. Long ones. From people in their 60s and 70s and 80s who said I was that person once. Who said I stood in a hallway in 1967 and did nothing. Who said I watched something happen on a bus in 1971 and I looked out the window. Who said I have been carrying this for 50 years and I have never said it out loud to anyone. Gerald Foss's small irregular travel blog became, for approximately 2 weeks, the place where a generation went to say the thing they had not been able to say. Marcus read every single one of them. He didn't respond. He didn't share. He didn't make it part of a campaign or a press strategy or a public moment. He just read them, alone, in his office, over 3 days, because they deserved to be read by someone. The press release went out Friday morning. Apex Logic AI and Horizon Air. 7-year integration partnership, 4.8 billion yen. The most advanced AI-driven cargo routing system ever deployed by a domestic airline. Projected emissions reduction. Projected delay reduction. 60 new positions beginning in the first quarter. Elaine had put every term in writing that could be put in writing. The equity commitments, the partnership oversight structure, the specific protocols for how Apex Logic team members would be treated in Horizon facilities, the consequences if those protocols were not followed. Not a press release commitment, a contractual one. David called at 8:15. "It's live, I know. Vertex stock is down 4 points. I know. Tech press is calling it the biggest single partner defection in airline industry history." That seems like a lot. "It's a lot of money, Marcus. It's not about the money. I know it's not about the money." A pause. "But the money helps make the point land." Marcus almost laughed. "Yeah, it does. 60 positions," David said. "Quieter now. The number sitting differently than when it had been an argument for staying. We're actually doing this." A pause. The particular silence of 2 people who started something together a long time ago in a shared workspace with second-hand furniture and a coffee maker that required a very specific sequence of button presses, and had now arrived at a place neither of them fully let themselves believe in back then. "Yeah, I'm proud of us." Marcus nodded at the phone. "Yeah," he said. "Me too." He drove to Fresno on Saturday. Not flew. Drove. 4 hours down the 99, the Central Valley, flat and wide in particular, the kind of landscape that people from other places call empty and people from here call honest. No pretense in it. Just the ground and the sky and the distance between them. He pulled into his mother's street at 2 in the afternoon. The house was the same house. Claudette Webb had been offered newer and bigger more than once. Marcus had made that possible years ago, and she had looked at each offer with the expression of someone who has been asked a question they find genuinely puzzling. "I know where everything is in this house," she always said. "I know which step creaks. I know what the light looks like in the kitchen at 4 in the afternoon in October. Why would I go somewhere I'd have to learn all of that again?" So the house was the same house. Marcus knocked even though he had a key. Because she had raised him to knock, she opened the door before his hand came down the second time. Claudette Webb, 71 years old. Silver hair cut close, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. An apron that had a small paint stain on the left side from when Maya had helped her redo the porch chairs 2 summers ago and taken the concept of helping very liberally. She looked at her son, just looked at him, the way she had always looked at him, like she was reading something. Like there was text in his face that most people couldn't see, and she had spent 47 years learning the language. "You look tired," she said. I'm okay, that's not what I said. She stepped back to let him in. Come sit down, the kitchen, the same counter, the same table with the same 4 chairs. The window over the sink that looked out at the small backyard where she grew tomatoes every summer, with a seriousness that Marcus had always found deeply admirable. She put the kettle on, not because he had asked, because that was what you did. He sat down at the table, put his keys on the surface, looked at the wood grain. Tell me, she said, her back to him, getting cups down, so he told her, not the summary. The whole thing. The parts he hadn't told Diana. The parts he hadn't told David or Elaine. The part in the hallway outside the conference room where he had stood against the wall with his eyes closed and felt 60 people's futures pressing on the inside of his chest. The part in the lobby when Gerald Foss called and he had sat down because his legs needed somewhere to be. The part on the flight home when the woman in the seat next to him had fallen asleep, and the cabin had gone dark and Marcus had sat in the quiet of 30,000 feet and felt something he hadn't let himself feel in 3 days, just tired. Not defeated, not broken. Just the specific tiredness that comes from being a person in a world that makes it harder than it should be to be the person you are, and carrying that gracefully, always gracefully, because the alternative has costs you can't afford, because anger makes them comfortable, because you learned a long time ago how to fold it small. The kettle clicked off. Claudette poured, set a mug in front of him, sat down across the table. She wrapped her hands around her own cup, looked at her son. You did right, she said. I know, I'm not saying it so you'll know. I'm saying it because sometimes you need to hear it from someone who was there at the beginning. She looked at him steadily. I was there at the beginning. He looked at her, at the face that had looked at him through every version of his life. Through the shoe with the separating sole and the borrowed library books and the workshop in the garage and the acceptance letter he hadn't told her about, until it was certain because he didn't want either of them to be disappointed, and the first investment and the first failure and the second attempt and slow, impossible climb to somewhere neither of them had a map to. You remember what you said to me, he said, in the hallway. I remember. I said it back to myself about 15 times this week. Claudette nodded slowly. Something moved across her face. Not pride exactly. Something deeper and quieter than pride. The specific satisfaction of some plant something a long time ago and is sitting now in its shade. You also told me something that day, she said. He looked at her. What did I say? She smiled. Small, the real one, the one that reached. You said you were going to build a school bigger than Norwood's entire district. Marcus laughed. Not the almost law of the past few days, the real one, the one that came from somewhere low and unguarded and surprised him on the way out. I was 13, he said. You were very certain. I was wrong about the school part, were you? She raised an eyebrow. You built something that 60 young engineers are about to walk into, something that will shape what they think is possible. She looked at him over her mug. That's a school, Marcus. It's just a different kind. He sat with that. The kitchen was warm. The light coming through the window over the sink was the particular late afternoon California light that Claudette had stayed in this house to keep. Golden, specific. The kind that makes everything look like it was painted on purpose. He did not want to leave. He stayed for dinner. He was home by 9. Diana heard the door and came into the hallway with her reading glasses on and a dish towel over her shoulder from where she had been cleaning up the kitchen, which meant she had already eaten but had left something for him, which was exactly what she had done. She looked at him the same way Claudette had looked at him. Women who loved him had this particular way of reading his face that no amount of professional composure had ever been able to fully guard against. He had stopped trying years ago. Better, she asked. Better. She put her hand on the side of his face for a moment. Just that, just her hand. Then Maya's still up. She finished the grid project. She wants to show you. Of course she does. It's actually very good. I know it is. He put his bag down, went to the kitchen, ate the thing she had made, which was the lemon chicken, which it always was, which he had said many times was his favorite and which was also true. Maya was at the kitchen table when he came back out, diagram spread in front of her, color-coded, annotated in her small, precise handwriting that looked exactly like Claudette's had looked at that age, which was a thing Marcus found quietly astonishing. She looked up. You look better. So everyone keeps telling me. That's because everyone was worried. He sat down across from her. Show me the project. She turned the diagram toward him and she explained it. The whole thing, the grid, the transfer nodes, the inefficiency she had found and corrected, the way redirecting the flow before the problem point meant nothing was wasted. Meant the output actually exceeded the original input because you weren't losing energy to a system that was pointing the wrong direction. He listened to all of it. When she finished, she looked at him with the expression of someone who has just presented evidence and is waiting for the verdict. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think," Marcus said, "that you figured out something this week that took me most of my career to understand." She tilted her head. "About the grid?" "About the grid." She considered that. "Is that why you did what you did? With the airline contract?" He looked at his daughter, 15 years old, sitting in the kitchen of a house in California on a Saturday night, with a color-coded diagram in front of her and her grandmother's handwriting and her father's eyes. "Yeah," he said, "that's why." She nodded, like this confirmed something she had already worked out. Because it probably did. Because she was Maya and she worked things out. "Good," she said, and turned the diagram back toward herself and picked up her pencil. Marcus sat there for a moment longer, just sat. He posted the statement on Sunday morning, not a press conference, not a media moment, just the company website, plain text, his name at the bottom. He wrote it the way he wrote everything important, at the kitchen table, before anyone else was up, with bad coffee and the particular quiet of a house that is full of people who are sleeping. He wrote it 3 times before he got it right. The final version said, "This wasn't about a system that assumes before it asks, that removes before it listens, that judges before it knows. I didn't walk away from that partnership out of anger. Anger would have been easier. Anger burns fast and leaves you with nothing. I walked away out of clarity. There is a difference between two. Anger wants to be right. Clarity wants to build something better. To the 60 engineers who are starting with us at Horizon Air in the spring, you belong there. Not because I say so, not because it's in a contract, but because you built something that matters and you deserve to bring it somewhere that knows the difference. To anyone who has ever been made to feel like they needed to prove their right to be in a room they earned, you don't owe anyone that proof. The room is wrong, not you. And to Gerald Foss, and to everyone who read what he wrote and recognize themselves in it, the fact that you know the difference between right and wrong is not enough on its own. But it is where everything starts. We deserve to belong, without explanation. Without apology, without a boarding pass held up to prove it. Build accordingly. MW. The response was not something Marcus had prepared for, which was not accurate. He had anticipated response. He understood the moment he was in. What he had not prepared for was the specificity of it. The messages that came in over the following days were not just about the flight. They were about the hallway outside the principal's office. They were about the job interview, where someone had said, "You're very well spoken." They were about the neighborhood meeting where someone had asked, "Do you live around here?" They were about 50 years of small accumulated moments that had never quite risen to the level of incident, but had never quite let anyone forget where they stood. Marcus read them, as many as he could, because they deserved to be read, and because Claudette had taught him a long time ago that listening is also a form of building, that you can construct something real out of the act of paying attention. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply make someone feel that what happened to them was witnessed. He was witnessed once, by no one, on a plane. He was trying to be the opposite of that. 3 weeks later he was home, not the office, not a conference call. Home, Saturday afternoon, the kind that California does in late November when it feels like the year is finally warm light, a slight wind. The sound of the neighbor's kid doing something on a skateboard, at the end of the block, that required repeated attempts and produced repeated crashes and apparently unlimited optimism. Marcus was on the porch. Diana came out with 2 glasses of lemonade and sat in the other chair and didn't say anything for a while. Which was one of the things about Diana. She knew when not saying anything was the most useful thing. Maya appeared in the doorway behind them. "Can I show you both something?" She brought out the grid diagram, except it wasn't the original anymore. She had extended it, built it out. The same logic applied to a larger system. More nodes, more transfer points, each one labeled, each one showing the flow. She stood between them and explained what she had changed and why. Marcus watched his daughter. In the late afternoon California light with her diagram and her pencil, and her complete belief that things could be understood and fixed and made to work right if you just looked carefully enough. He thought about the jet bridge. He thought about 30 people. He thought about Gerald Foss at a keyboard in Columbus, Ohio, writing something true that he was not sure anyone would read. He thought about Claudette in a hallway in 1992, walking out of a room with her head level and her hands steady and 23 more years of teaching in front of her. He thought about 60 engineers coming through a door in the spring. He thought about energy, about how it doesn't disappear, about how it just goes somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. About what happens when you finally redirect it right. Diana reached over and put her hand on his. He turned his hand over and held hers. Maya finished explaining her diagram and looked up and found both her parents looking at her and said, with the particular mix of fondness and exasperation that was her default setting for most human interaction, "Why are you both being weird?" "We're not being weird," Diana said. "You're definitely being weird. We're being proud," Marcus said. Maya considered this, looked back at her diagram, then at her father. Did what happened? Did it change anything? Like really change anything? He thought about that. The real answer was complicated. The real answer involved timelines and legal proceedings and corporate culture, and the deep, slow grinding work of systems that resist change even when everyone inside them agrees that change is needed. The real answer was that one man walking off one plane and signing one different contract was not a revolution, was not even close to a revolution. But it changed the room, Marcus said. Some rooms, some people in them. He looked at his daughter. That's how it always starts. Not big, small, one room at a time. Maya looked at him for a long moment, then she nodded once, clean. The nod of someone who is filing something away in a place where they will find it later when they need it. When they are standing in their own hallway, outside their own room, being asked to prove something they shouldn't have to prove. She took her diagram and went inside. Marcus and Diana sat on the porch. The skateboard kid tried again at the end of the block, fell again, got up again. The light held, and Marcus Webb sat in the chair on the porch of the house he had built the long way, the only way he knew. And he breathed in the November California air and felt the ground under him and thought about his mother's voice. People can question where you stand, but nobody takes that ground away from you, not unless you hand it to them yourself. He had not handed it to anyone. He never would.